It's time for Global Insight, where we speak to experts from around the world on issues making headlines. After months of anticipation, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework was launched by 13 countries, including the United States, South Korea, Japan and others in the region, via a virtual rollout event. Representing 40% of the world's GDP, the US-driven deal aims to bring countries together on securing supply chains and enabling connected, resilient, clean and fair economies through common standards based on shared values. The deal was designed from the initial stages to bring the US back into the Indo-Pacific economy after former President Donald Trump walked out of the then Transpacific Partnership. It's also seen by some as a way for Washington to rally its allies economically amid its ongoing rivalry with China. Now we discuss what the deal looks like as of now and how it will shape up in the weeks and months to come. For this, we're joined by Soo-young, Professor of Business and Economics at Chung-Ang University in Seoul, and Sayuri Shirai, Professor of Policy Management at Keio University. Thank you both so much for joining us today. And, well, a lot of ground to cover, so let's start right away with you, Professor Song. Now, the joint declaration of the IPEF launch, it kind of failed to clarify a lot of vagueness that was criticised by many observers because this initial deal, it failed to provide any details as to what kind of market access or tariff reductions there would be, along with other provisions. And while addressing scepticism around the IPEF, US Trade Secretary Gina Raimondo said that there would be firm commitments and signed agreements sometime in the future. But do you think, Professor, this is going to be easy to achieve for these 13 economies?
Yeah, well, good morning to you all. And as is said earlier, that actually the four policy pillars which was proposed under the government statement, announcement, declaration, it is quite vague. So the four pillars are consisted with a connected economy, resilient economy, and the clean economy and the fair economy. And the first pillar is under the leadership by the USTR, Trade Representative, but the other three is under the guidance of the Department of Commerce. Therefore, it means that the country, currently the 12 countries who would like to participate in each different pillar, and then they continue or they are conducting some kind of a ministerial negotiation for to participate in the IPEF. In contrast, this could be quite in contrast with the RCEP, which was led by China. The difference is quite clear that the membership countries, RCEP include Laos and Myanmar and Cambodia, and those countries are actually has some problem of the domestic political situation. So that's why this IPEF, for the U.S., the purpose is to contain China from participating in this kind of the economic framework. Then the U.S. decided not to be engaged with the Myanmar or Cambodia and the Laos, those countries. So the issue is RCEP is clearly the free trade agreement. The agenda is very clear, and reduction of tariff and foster and facilitate a free trade among the member countries within. But IPEF, there is no such commitment, even though as the anchor has mentioned, the Raymond, U.S. Trade Secretary, she is going to make a commitment, and they are going to make a signature and the negotiation among the member countries. But it is we have to see what it will be going on, and because of particularly the digital issues are not addressed, but it is included in the different policy pillars. So we have to see what is the specifics will be disclosed for the upcoming future.
Yeah, still a lot of questions around what this still really is all about. And Professor Shirai, now, the IPEF is supposed to be America's door back into the regional economy after former President Trump pulled out of the TPP, and also to provide some kind of counterbalance against China's own regional economic network. But right now, with a lack of details and enthusiasm from some member countries, do you think that IPEF is going to work towards America's advantage? Or, like what some are saying, do you think the US will still have to join the CPTPP?
So I think President Biden knows that US Congress is not going to pass any free trade agreement such as CPTPP because cutting tariff or cutting non-tariff barriers, that might lead to the loss of American jobs. And then, midterm election is coming in November, and it's not right time to discuss about it. And also China is already applying for the membership of CPTPP, so it's going to be very complicated. So rather than sticking to the possible participation in a CPTPP, Biden decided to create a completely new framework of corporations as a starting point. And then at this moment, I don't see any clear binding agreement among these members, and it may take a lot of time to do that. But I think as a starting point, showing some signal to China and other country may be a good starting point, step. Yeah.
And Professor Song, now IPEF has it's failed to deliver any kind of concrete details on what kind of benefits it's going to offer its members. And many were hoping that it would be tariff reductions or greater access to the US market. And well, for South Korea, separate from IPEF, it's been hoping to have some quotas on its steel products removed by the US. They were put under a 70% quota by the US back in 2018. So do you see any positive developments towards that? Or what do you think is really going on?
It's hope. Yeah, we could make a hope, but it's quite vague. Considering the situation in as for the steel products related issues, actually in 2021, the U.S. government has lifted some kind of disputes between U.S. and Europe, and then. As early as 2022, such as prominent economists and Kruger criticized the Biden administration not to participate in the CPTPP because Biden, during the presidential election, he has made an appointment and promise to reverse the Trump administration's and the Trump's agenda issues, but actually. Currently, the Biden administration just follow the Trumpian sanctions against around the world. So IPEF is a new exit and without any agreement, as the Professor Shirai has mentioned, that because the Congress clearly object the free trade or the reduction of tariff because of they faced some midterm election for the Congress. So therefore, it is quite difficult for the Biden administration to initiate the reversal of Trumpian administration sanctions. So to that regard, the 70% quota is we can hope hopefully we could get some mercy from the U.S. government, but it's quite difficult because this is related to the issues must get some approval from the Congress. So that is also affected by some political issues, domestic U.S. domestic political issues. So it's quite unlikely, I think.
Sure. So a very politically sensitive time for Mr. Biden. And well, Professor Shirai, now, before President Biden headed to Tokyo, there was the South Korea-US joint, the South Korean-US summit. And, well, the joint statement out of that meeting, it emphasized the importance of trilateral efforts for economic security. And this, of course, involves Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington. So how do you think we can really make good progress on that cooperation and really overcome the 2019 bilateral trade rift as well?
Yes, so this trilateral relationship is very crucial for us, but I think there is some perception gap as for this export restriction by Japan to Korea on semiconductor in 2019, because I think Korea understood that this Japan's action is a sort of retaliation to Korean Supreme Court decision about requiring Japanese company to pay compensation. But in the case of Japan, the Japanese government say this decision was made purely in terms of security, WTO related concerns, sort of related to North Korea. So within Japan, there's no discussion about linking these two issues, but Korea take it in this way. So under this situation, how to create some kind of negotiation or compromise is quite complicated. But at least I think Japanese government and then Korean government want to move a step forward on this. So I hope there will be some negotiation starting on this issue.
Well, we've certainly seen some very positive developments on that front, with the new Yoon government showing a lot of optimism towards really mending ties with Tokyo. And, well, Professor Song, do you think there's going to be any movement at all on forging the Semiconductor Alliance, or the Fab 4 or Chip 4, whatever the US is calling it, in the near future?
Yeah, as for the this morning, I would like to mention that Prime Minister of Singapore has mentioned that this IPEF should not be a NATO equivalent in East Asia, in Asia. So clearly speaking, the supply chain and the semiconductor issues are quite important for US. But we have to take into account, as Professor Shirai has mentioned, the conflict between the Korea and Japan in 2019, because of Japan has banned the export of the very important, critical, essential materials for Korea for the production of the semiconductors. So still we have those hurdles we should overcome, and in terms of in the context of the historical background and the upcoming issues. It's a quite daunting job, and then we should, in order to make the IPEF to be a successful framework that helps facilitate economic alliance and stability of the supply chain and the semiconductor, then the political issue or the military issue should be excluded. Otherwise, it's quite maybe provocative. Even the Chinese government currently very worried of the IPEF, and they has blamed the IPEF as the equivalent to NATO in East Asia. So to that regard, we may say that we have to say that the IPEF, in order to make sure that the peaceful and stable economic cooperation within the region, including the U.S., the firm commitment for some peaceful process among the countries, and very progressive attitude to overcome the hurdles, that is quite necessary. So then we can say the cooperation and some smooth supply chain of semiconductor and the Fabulous 4, whatever it is, fabrication of the semiconductor production facilities.
Right, so it looks like the leaders, they really need to show agility and also finesse in really narrowing down the scope of what they can agree on and move forward on, and see progress on that. But Professor Shirai, now before we go, what is your outlook on the Semiconductor Alliance that the US is, it seems very eager to forge between the four countries, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and of course the United States?
Yes, so all four countries are producing semiconductor chips, but different types. And I think if we can, diversify this supply chain related to semiconductor, it's very important. But at this moment, these, initiatives are quite fragmented. Like Taiwan was not able to participate in IPEF, right? And then so at this moment, Korea is going to have a factory in United States. Taiwan is going to have a factory in Japan or United States. But I'm just wondering if we can discuss, any more, cooperation beyond this. So it's not clear at this moment.
Right. Well, we'll have to wait and see. But perhaps the IPEF deal does need to become a little more specific in order to do that. But of course, we have weeks to see that, according to the US Commerce Secretary. Now, well, this is where we'll have to finish the interview today. But that was Soo-young, Professor of Business and Economics at Chung-Ang University in Seoul, and Sayuri Shirai, Professor of Policy Management at Keio University. Thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.